And fantastic, thanks, Sarah. My name's Piet Filet, and I'm from the International Water Centre, and we're part of the engagement team working with the Department of Environment and Sciences to support the activities of Queensland Water Modelling Network. And my colleague Sarah Cochrane is online here too, so she'll be helping us out and jumping in from time to time. And we have our guest Tim Fichera today from Bundaberg Regional Council. But look, from the outset, we're here to share some stories, but in the spirit of true acknowledgement of some great storytellers, I want to acknowledge Indigenous custodians of the country, of all the different places where you might be. I'm in Jagera and Turrbal country here today, so I'm keen to acknowledge all Indigenous colleagues and elders past, present, and the future. And I really want to acknowledge the opportunities and insights that they share about their land, sea, air and sky. You know, the role of our Indigenous colleagues is really important, and we've been trying to explore that through the Water Modelling Network. So my acknowledgement to any Indigenous colleagues online today as well. Look, but today's event, we call it the Water Chat, and it's very much meant to be that. So as we're going along today, if you've got some queries or questions you want to throw in, just throw things into the chat. We'll be pausing from time to time, so you can literally reach out and ask questions to Tim. But as I was alluding to before, the Water Modelling Network is a broad collective of colleagues working in a whole range of different roles. And the water modelling focus from our state government colleagues is a desired view to get a better appreciation of the sort of modelling tools that are out there, but it's in the context of how we look at making water management sort of decisions, plans, strategies, implementation. So it's a very broad brush, the themes of areas that we work in. And we do have it, like I said, Sarah's put up the link to our network. We've had a range of events now over the last 5 years, lots of workshops and different things that we do, but we're often really keen to often get to know some of the people that are part of our collective, and that's the purpose of today. So folks, it's meant to be very informal. If you want to turn your camera on from time to time, that's great. Love to see you, but otherwise Tim and I are going to start a conversation, and it is my pleasure to introduce Tim Fichera from Bundaberg Regional Council. Like I've known, the reason I have Tim along is that Tim's been actually coming along to our events literally from nearly 2018, 2019. Tim was coming down to one of our very first 2-day forums that we had. So with a small team from Bundaberg, the next minute we had this registration go, oh, these are interested people, and you've maintained that tradition, Tim. So it's like this network isn't new to you, but Tim, Bundaberg as a local government authority, so part of what we're going to do today is get to know a bit more about Tim and what, you know, some of his roles and responsibilities and some of the skills that he brings to the game. But first, let's give us a bit of a quick snapshot about Bundaberg and the Regional Council, because I think that has a bit of an influence on maybe what follows. So Tim, for your local government, sort of water infrastructure is a big issue that you're grappling with.
Yeah, it has been, and I think, you know, specifically from a stormwater point of view. So I'm the team lead for stormwater infrastructure planning in Bundaberg. I've been in this role for about 7 years now that I've been in this team, and prior to that I was in the design team in council. So I've been at council for just over 11 years now, and prior to that I was in the private sector. Most of my time spent at GHD in design, but I've always been in that stormwater design area. And I think for Bundaberg, some of the key things for us in stormwater, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of local governments, particularly regional, you know, there's a lot of challenges there and a lot of needs for the people. And for us, we really started to look at our challenges and needs in 2018, 2019, when we developed our first ever stormwater management strategy. And through that, some of the key values and needs that we identified, there are three really key things that we identified, and that was proactively managing flood risk, and specifically overland and creek flood risk, livability, and how we how we deal with social and environmental benefits in stormwater management, and then also sustainable asset management. So not just our existing assets, but our gifted assets that we get through development.
Right.
And I mean, some of those real challenges that we were dealing with, and again, like many other local governments, from a flood risk management perspective, we were really struggling with proactive management and investing in projects of the highest risk. So we had little understanding of our highest flood risk areas throughout the whole region. We were building capital works programs based on customer complaints. So we were doing stormwater upgrade projects based on complaints. Complaints would get prioritized, and we'd invest in dealing with complaints. So we're really struggling with that, and again, it just comes through little understanding of where we should be investing. And from a livability point of view, we identified that a lot of our stormwater assets were really only single functioning assets. They'd only deliver a technical stormwater function, and that would come at the cost of social and environmental benefits. So, for example, we'd be putting in a lot of concrete drains, removing vegetation to put in a concrete drain to maximize development yield, and to deal with flood risk to a degree as well. The other thing that we identified was our stormwater detention basins. Again, just a single function asset that would sit in the corner. Its function was there to detain stormwater, to be a grassed area, and that's pretty much all it'd do. And from an asset management point of view, that's an asset that you've got to mow. There's a cost to that, but it really doesn't bring any other value to the community. So yeah, from an asset management point of view, we were seeing a lot of issues with those types of things. We're also seeing a lot of issues with the way we were managing our existing stormwater network. And the reason was quite simple. We had no understanding of the condition of our existing network. We have $300 or $350 million worth of stormwater assets, and we had never done a condition assessment. So our programs, our renewal programs, were based on failure of our assets. When an asset would fail, we'd go in and deal with it then. So we're very reactive in what we were doing. And we were doing little to no trunk infrastructure planning in our emerging development areas as well. And, we were seeing these same issues coming through, in that it'd be left to development to determine what the infrastructure needed to be. But generally, we were seeing that it was single functioning assets, and things would happen in a piecemeal way. And when we were planning for our infrastructure in that piecemeal way, it wasn't well integrated, and it wasn't considering the broader regional requirements as well.
Right.
And that process would basically mean that the costs were extremely high for that trunk infrastructure as well. So these are, look, and we're still dealing with a lot of these issues now, but they're the key issues for us in Bundaberg with stormwater management.
And see, so like Tim and I did have a chat before the event, and but I think what I like what you're describing is that when you use the word sustainable, you are talking about issues about cost. It's about that longevity. It's a whole range of those different things that sort of go with infrastructure. And I suppose you mentioned that sort of that stormwater strategy back in 2018-19, but I suppose a lot of us are aware that, well, I am particularly, like in 2013, and then a couple of years later, Bundaberg was was exposed to some significant big flood events. So maybe
Correct.
there's sort of been a bit of and building that flood resilience, like stormwater's sort of one element, but the big regional floods is something else. But maybe that whole issue about how you build this sort of capacity to deal with future events, sort of whether you use the word sustainable or resilient or what have you. But you think that created a bit of a different view on the world?
I think so, definitely. I mean, 2013, yeah, that was our biggest river event on record for us. We, like Brisbane, we got hit in 2010, 11 as well. So we had 2 river floods in a row, but we had our biggest localized event in October 2017. So we had the exact number off my head. I think it was about 300 mil in a day over Bundaberg. So we were hit very hard at a local level. So a lot of overland flooding, a lot of creek flooding, and a lot of the outcomes of that really drove the direction of the strategy as well. We learned a lot from that and understood the needs and values of the community through that as well, but also understood where our limitations were, or where we were falling short on our current planning, because all of a sudden, through a really big local event, we were now understanding, well, there's lots of other risk spots as well through what we're hearing and what we know, what we've measured. We knew it that was definitely a big learning for us anyway, that look, we need to change the way we're dealing with local flood risk, because we weren't dealing with the high risk stuff at the end of the day.
No, and what you said is interesting. It'd be interesting, and if people want to put comments in the chat, and like the ability for local government to be proactive, it's an easy thing to say, but to actually do that, which I suppose sort of brings me into this, and I suppose that's the role. And when you're on staff working at a council, you've got a range of different roles. But I suppose in your team leader role, then Tim, like some of the things you're talking about, so was it your team that had to lead the development of that strategy? Was that something that sat on you, or was that part of a bigger part of council having to do that? Like you're obviously talking to the community as well. Like these are some of the things that you, Tim, are out there talking to people face to face or bringing people in. Like how did bringing that strategy? What did that look like?
Yeah, so it was driven out of our team, particularly myself and Dwayne. I was the project manager on it, with Dwayne a really big driver for it. He's got to take a lot of credit for that project, that's for sure. And what it was really about for us was bringing all parts of council together. It's an integrated strategy. It's not just blinkers on stormwater, that's it, because we knew that we were, with the livability aspects, the social and environmental aspects of what we need to bring into stormwater management, we knew we needed to bring in other parties. So yeah, that involved, unfortunately, it was through COVID time that we were developing it. It took us about 2 years to finish it. So that had an impact on how much community consult we were able to do. But what we did is we brought the councillors along for the ride and engaged very heavily with them, using them as the face of the community, basically, to understand the community's needs and values as well. And what we did find through that process is there is a very high value from council and the community to bring in these other benefits to stormwater management. That the environment and the social aspects are a very high value for them, and they want to see this. Yes, we need to deliver the technical requirements of stormwater. We still need to manage stormwater so people aren't being flooded, but we need to bring in all these other benefits as well, so that when we invest in these things, we get better value out of these things. And again, the resilience of these things, the sustainability of it, looking longer term of how we can do things better. Council was very on board with that.
Okay. So these were, because just give us a bit of a reminder. So Bundaberg at the moment, what sort of size population are you looking at Jill?
We're pretty much 100,000.
100,000.
Yeah.
And like it's there's sort of new, like it wouldn't be as sort of, the sort of the rate of development. It's just a steady ongoing change
It's
each year, or
it goes in waves. I mean, I think like most places, since COVID, things have definitely taken off. There was a very, very steep influx of development over the last few years. I believe it's starting to tail off now, but prior to that, yeah, it was very up and down. Steady is probably a decent way to
yeah.
say it, but yeah, it's really gone hard since COVID, that's for certain.
Okay. So you've got a mixture, like you said, you've got a mixture of old assets and new ones, because some of the things you talk about, like we did try and post some pictures early on. You've had a couple of little specific projects that have been sort of, I suppose, sort of you use the, in a sort of nature-based solutions type approach, or naturalization has been
Yep.
been. So what are the skills that you bring to the table, Tim, when you start to talk to that? Like one of the things I'm sort of reading between the lines is that you've actually had some good conversations with the councillors along the way. Like, it's not only do they get to build the strategy, but I suppose more importantly, then understand what sort of costs are involved as well. Because I think that's, from my
Ye-
experience in local government, none of this really works. And where if there's an investment involved, then they need to have a clear understanding of what the benefits are.
Correct. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learnt with council is buy-in. You got to get the buy-in, and that engagement with them is so key. You'll never get anything over the line if you walk into a council meeting and go, "This is what I think we should do,"
Yeah.
if you haven't brought them along for the ride, basically. And the naturalizations that you speak of. So for us, yeah, look, we're on the train at the moment. We're all in for naturalisation at the moment.
Yeah.
We finished our first naturalisation at Belleden a bit over 2 years ago now, I think it is.
Yeah.
And that was a pilot for us. But the really good thing about that is that because we've done a pilot project in a low risk area, we've been able to deliver a product that is has turned out to be a really positive project. And what the good thing about that is that now council has you can take the councillors down to it, and you can physically show them, they can feel it, they can touch it, they can see what we mean when we're talking about, look, we should naturalize this area.
Yeah.
And rather than, yeah, me going in there with a PowerPoint presentation and going, we should naturalize this. So actually putting something on the ground and showing them what we mean and seeing the benefits that they get out of it has been, in my opinion, probably one of the biggest wins that we get of getting buy-in with council. I mean, the other thing too is the community. So out there where we did do the naturalisation, it was a big community consultation process. We had to
Okay.
get buy-in of the community because it was such a change. And, the question is always asked, it's a drain, why are you roughening it up? You want to get the water away as quickly as possible. And that was the biggest thing to try and turn the thinking around of what we can do with these drains that were once a natural waterway. Yeah, now that we've got it on the ground and we've had success out of it, we've got that buy-in of the community and council that we're very close to finishing another naturalisation at Washbill Creek.
Okay.
And yeah, we've got plans to do more in the coming years.
So in your role, somehow you is it you yourself who gets involved in the physical consultation with the community? Like, is that, or do you have some other colleagues who help you, or they go, no?
Yeah, yeah, look, we for our projects, yeah, look, we lead it, and we've got a community consultation team who help
Yeah.
facilitate that as well. And
Okay.
yeah, we also try to bring in the other asset owners. So when we are doing a naturalisation of a drain that's then going to likely go over to a natural areas
Yeah.
crew for maintenance and looking after that asset over time, we're making sure that we're integrating with those departments, and getting buy-in from those departments as well inside council. So it is definitely a team effort. But yeah, generally being led by our team. And then when we've got a consultant on board as well, obviously, that they're very much a part of that process.
So what's the consultant doing? Are they looking after more the detailed design, or
Uh, I-
what?
in this space, generally in the nature-based stuff, look, we're very new to this space, and the nature-based stuff is not my expertise whatsoever. So our learning curve is very steep. So we are using the consultants for planning and design of these things,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
we understand the importance of getting them right too.
Yeah.
Because if we got that first one wrong, the buy-in then is a lot harder to get. So we need these things to be successful up front. So we're specifically targeting consultants who we think have the best chance of giving us
Yeah.
a successful product.
Yeah.
And look, we've been really lucky with the consultants that we have been dealing with recently. And, you know, we've built some really good relationships with some of those consultants as well. I know some of those consultants get a lot of phone calls from me just to ask questions and to validate things. I know, like Jordan Maltby and Sally Bohr, those types, they're getting phone calls from me constantly. They're probably sick of seeing my name come up on their phone. But yeah, building that relationship with these consultants who are also really passionate about this type of project like we are, that's been so important for success of these types of projects.
But Tim, one of the things I've noticed, and like for people who don't know Dwayne Honor, who's sort of Tim's colleague based in Bundaberg, Dwayne had a Churchill Fellowship a few years ago looking at issues to do with tsunamis and some of the big floods. So, and I know Dwayne has always been interested to learn and see things. Like his Churchill Fellowship took him to different parts of the world. But I think like it's not unusual to see a team of Bundaberg, turn up for an 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock meeting in Brisbane, where they've actually hopped in the car that morning and literally driven down so that they can participate. So I think you have a really interesting sort of bit of a local approach where you don't want to miss out. You want to be learning from others. Like that's something that you guys do a bit, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, look, I've got a level of technical understanding with things, but the most important thing that I've learned, particularly over the last 5 or 10 years as you get a bit older too, and one thing that Dwayne does drive into us as well, and this is one great thing about having Dwayne as a manager, is that we understand the importance of continual learning, continual improvement. And Dwayne always says to me, you never want to be the smartest guy in the room. And in my case, that happens all the time anyway. So that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but we would not be where we are if we weren't thinking like that. And I think back to, so the naturalization concept for us, it was not on our radar at all until we attended a conference in 2016. I think it was an IECA or Stormwater Queensland conference.
Yeah.
And Amali Wright gave a presentation on Small Creek.
All
and
right.
that just completely changed my mindset personally. It had a real impact on me of how we can do stormwater management better. I was still going and designing my concrete drains,
Yeah.
going, this is great, look at my concrete drain. And you don't know until you see something else, do you? And that's what happened. That's what has happened with naturalization for us. It wasn't on our radar until we saw it. At that point, we investigated it further from there. We got in contact with Logan City. Sorry, Logan or Ipswich, one of them. Sorry, I've probably got that wrong. And contacted the consultants who worked on that project through Alan Hoban and Bly Tanner. And from that point on, that's where we really started looking into nature-based solutions at the end of the day. So that's why it's so important for us to be coming to Southeast Queensland, because look, generally you are a couple of steps ahead of us in the region. That's where we can learn what's working, what's not working, and bring it back to the region.
Okay. Folks, look, I'm just conscious that I'm keen. There's a few other things I want to ask of Tim, but before we get to there, I just wanted to pause and just flag around the room whether anyone's got some questions from it's funny, Malia was going, she actually would register the Small Creek project in Ipswich. I think it's been a great little showcase for a whole range of people like Megan. I don't know what's happening in the Logan area for.
Yeah, hi Pete. I was gonna jump in and
Please.
firstly just say thank you, Tim. It sounds like you're describing us in terms of where you were is where we are now. You know, we've sort of traditionally it's all been about concrete drains and pipes, and our little team here is super keen to see some change in that space, and we're
Great.
just hoping to start some research on integrating stormwater assets to make them those multi-function assets that you're talking about, and we're super keen to get some naturalization done. So yeah, like
Great.
would love to learn from you guys. Um,
Cool.
but I was curious about the naturalization without getting into any great detail, but was there an element around having to accept some flood impacts? You mentioned, you know, they have a drainage function. Obviously, if you naturalize, it's going to change the response, which is what we want. But did you have to take even council people on a journey to sort of say, yep, there will be an impact, and or the community? Like, was it an issue for the community, or did you have to actually mitigate any flood impact?
Yeah, definitely from a perception point of view, it was a significant issue, really, really huge issue. But for that first project that we did at Bell Eden, we purposely picked a site that was a storage-driven site. It wasn't controlled by the conveyance potential of the creek. There were 2 road crossings across the creek that they control the floodwaters. Basically, that it's effectively what they've created there in that urban area is effectively 2 really large detention basins. So we did purposely pick it just because to reduce any adverse flood risk whatsoever. We went through a fairly heavy modelling process to I guess support that position anyway, and through that modelling process and the community consultation that we did to address people's concerns, that's how we dealt with the risk of that site. We are starting to get to the point with a few drains where they're reaching end of life, and we know we want to do something with them rather than concrete. We know that we have a couple of sites that are going to be impacted by not having enough room to do a full naturalization, and what we're doing with them at the moment is looking at ways to not so much do a full naturalization, do a semi-naturalization, but at least try and connect the surface water to groundwater again, taking away that concrete in that regard, and trying to get as much as we possibly can. But yeah, it's definitely going to become an issue as we keep going through the system. But we are looking at our creek systems at a regional scale as well, and looking for where we could create regional detentions so that areas where we don't have a lot of room, we can start to potentially do something with them by reducing the rate of flow upstream of those points. So, but yeah, absolutely, the point you make is spot on. It's definitely a hard one. Exactly
Yeah.
right. Correct.
Yeah. And another thought that I had, and this is probably actually stemming from me listening in on a meeting that I wasn't actually a part of, but you know, we often get pulled into parks projects quite late in the day, and we sort of see an opportunity that we could have integrated some really good stormwater management, but it's that sort of silo effect that you're talking about, where you have to make sure there's some good consultation early on in these projects, and maybe just a change in thinking of like a parks asset is not just a parks asset, you know, and that
Correct.
could actually function as a stormwater asset, and without taking away from the objective of the park. So yeah, again, for us, we're sort of just starting to have these conversations and look for these opportunities. So yeah, really interesting chat. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I think, and just a little bit further on that. Yeah, look, we've that silo. It's definitely local government. It's definitely an issue. We have we've found that I think through the development of the strategy and the development of these bigger naturalisation projects and making sure that we're working with the parks teams and the natural areas team right from up front and getting them to have input to what the outcome is, getting that buy-in, it has actually created a good relationship with those departments. And I'm in contact with our parks team on a weekly basis at the moment, because we've broken it down through a number of projects that we've done together. So just a bit of
and it all comes back to planning, and it takes time for these for the planning cycle to sort of change and come together. So it probably takes a bit of legwork before you can start to see fruition.
Exactly. And I think, like, traditionally in local government too, and this is just my experience, historically, you're wanting to, councillors want to see stuff on the ground. So there's probably not a lot of time put in, or as much time as required put into the planning as what it should be. But we're pretty lucky again in Bundaberg in that the likes of our management team at the moment really see the value in the planning department, and we are getting a lot more resource and time put into the planning department than what I've ever seen in the history since I've been here, which I mean is relatively short, 10 years. But we are definitely punching a lot more time and resource into planning over the last few years.
How big a council is Bundaberg, Tim? How many people are you working with there roughly?
So the infrastructure planning team in Bundaberg at the moment is 7 of us.
Okay. Wow.
So we were down to 3 or 4 of us only 2 years ago. So we are building, and then the other thing that's happening now is the design team is now getting plugged into the planning space, correct, to start deliver the 30% concept basically, and help, and the design team is being brought in to help us do options analysis as well now, rather than doing the detailed design for construction drawings. That they're being plugged now into our team, and they're a team of about 10 or so. So we are definitely seeing those resources pushed back into the planning team.
Oh no, that's interesting. Like every council's a little bit different. Like when you go Brisbane, Ipswich, Toowoomba, they're all sort of slightly different sizes. Like we're not talking about the really tiny little ones that maybe have to outsource everything. Like you've got a critical mass there by the sound of it. And I suppose it's that ability. How do you be able to just easily talk to each other? Like the bigger it gets, the harder it is. Maybe smaller, it's sort of some sort of sweet spot somewhere in there, isn't there?
Absolutely. No, I think we're definitely lucky in that regard. Like our design team and our infrastructure planning team, we're literally on the same level with one wall between us. So we're lucky in that regard. As long as the communication's there, it does work quite well.
Any other questions there that folk might want to throw at Tim there? Like we did, I'm just conscious. I just realised he's gone. We did have some questions that came in before. Bronwyn had a question. Bronwyn, you had sent in a question around the role of stormwater reuse when you registered, and I know Tim had looked at it, and Tim, you were reflecting on that. There is a good water supply scenario at the moment, so maybe it isn't a high priority, but maybe you want to elaborate.
We do have good water supply in Bundaberg, luckily. What I'm aware of currently at the moment, I'm not aware of us looking into harvesting for water supply at the moment. We are, through our stormwater mitigation projects, looking at stormwater harvesting for improving flood risk, but also using that water for watering of parks and sports grounds and that type of thing. To my knowledge, that's the most I know about of what's going on in Bundaberg at the moment. So I could be giving you a bit of a bum steer potentially, but look, not that I know of just at the moment. I'm sorry.
Oh, you'd be saying
that's okay. Thanks, Tim. I did have another question, which might be a bit of a question for the room. But Cairns is a tropical climate, and like we do look to Southeast Queensland for lots of great examples of water management, but not all of them are applicable in a tropical region. So I was kind of wondering whether anybody knows of good examples of like waterway naturalization projects in tropical regions.
What's some thoughts there? What are you hearing, Jamie Caulfield? You have a bit of a state roll up and down the state. You maybe you're seeing some things around Mackay or Townsville, but the true wet tropics where when it rains. It's it's meant to be wet. But
yeah, Townsville's got the bushland beach channel of naturalisation in development. So I understand the plantings are just going ahead now.
okay.
That's dry tropics, obviously. It doesn't have the same rainfall for that as Cairns, but that would be the nearest example I can think of.
Right. Okay. But no, Bronwyn, you need to just keep stirring the pot on that to see what's possible. Like I know Hunshi Lee, she's not here today, but I know she'd been doing some work previously, and from JCU. But I know she's sort of been keen to look. I know Cairns has got a few challenges, and since the way it's sort of been built up over time, and a lot of channels have disappeared underground. So, but no, not to say that you can't revisit it all. But
just observing the chat here, and Tim Davies, do you want to just speak? Tim? There's a question in there from Tim. Do you plan stormwater quality infrastructure, and are they listed in the LGIP?
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yes, we do plan stormwater quality infrastructure. We consider our naturalizations as part of that. However, we've just finished a study with AECOM to identify stormwater quality improvement strategies and devices for the Bundaberg CBD area, knowing that it's a high pollutant contributor, which is built into the Capital Works program. And ultimately, that will go into the LGIP. It's currently not in there, though, that I know of. The other thing that we're doing is with other stormwater quality infrastructure that we're planning at the moment. I touched on the detention basins about that we had identified. Look, they're single functioning assets. They require maintenance by council. We're doing a pilot on one of the detention basins that we have here in Bundaberg to plant it out, basically do, for lack of a better word, a mini naturalisation in the detention basin, with the intent that we'd like to get that to the point where it can be low maintenance, but also provide stormwater quality benefit. The detention basin can still provide its stormwater quantity function through detention, but also create, microhabitat, urban cooling, that type of thing. So we're doing projects like that at the moment to look to see how we can utilise our infrastructure or bring it to a multi-functioning type of infrastructure that delivers water quality benefits as well. So that's sort of where we're at the moment.
Cool. There's been, I know Brad Dalrymple, he was on before, and he'd had sent in a question around just the plastics and pollutant roads. Tim's also put this comment about trash. Bundaberg has the Monrepos rookery of all the turtles, quite famous for its sort of ecological natural value. So is that something that that's an issue, or something you try and manage within council as best as you can?
Yeah, so we have a waterways rubbish removal program that we're currently doing. It's specifically targeted around the Burnett River, Callan River, and Elliott River, but specifically at the Burnett because most of our urban area actually discharges to the Burnett. So and they're specifically targeting gross pollutants, plastics, etc. Also, that item of work that I spoke of with AECOM has identified a number of gross pollutant traps to target that type of pollutant as well. So they're sort of some of the key things that we're doing. The other thing is community education. We've identified the need to go hard on the community education with this sort of stuff. And it's not something that we've done fantastic in the past, and it is something that we're working towards.
Yeah. Hey, look, an interesting question from Ross Bigwood from Healthy Land and Water is this. And look, Ross, you guys are, have got naturalisation as a big part of your profile of activities. But I suppose Ross was just flagging. So Tim, with the regional NRM groups, are they sometimes a partner for you in any projects, in both in planning and delivery? Like, I'm assuming you'd be part of the Mary Burnett.
We are in the
group.
Mary Regional Group. The projects that I've personally delivered, the naturalizations, we haven't had a lot to do with them. We're doing a little bit of work at the moment around Money's Creek Lagoon at Bargara, which BMRG has been driving a lot of as well. Not a lot of outcomes out of that at the moment that I'm aware of anyway, but yeah, I wouldn't say we're partnering a lot with those types of bodies, to be honest. But it's a good point you make, actually.
Yeah, but I suppose it sounds like it's whether you get some projects where you link up with, but I think in terms of those skills of naturalisation, like I know it's definitely for the NRM groups is something which is their sort of core business, and then how you can share with that expertise.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll take note of that and follow that up, actually.
So it's good. Ross, or maybe Ross, are there some BRMG people that you can suggest to Tim maybe that might be good to connect with, maybe? Because a lot of it's about the people. Maybe there's someone in the BRMG team that you might want to suggest at some stage. But hey, Ross.
Hey, how you going, Pete? Yeah, I'll have a look into it. I mean, we deal with 12 local government councils around here, so that's a minefield in itself. But yeah, probably a bit simpler in the Bundaberg.
Yeah.
So, yeah, send me an email or something, Tim, and I'll.
Okay, perfect.
That's great, Ross.
Thanks for that. That's good.
Yeah. But look just to get people to get a feel. So Tim, it sounds like you've spent most of your working life in and around Bundaberg. So like some people might say, crikey, this guy's just never got out of town. He's always there. But there's obviously, so what do you think makes it worthwhile being in a spot like Bundaberg? Like it's
yeah, well, you're right. I'm born and bred in Bundaberg. I have never lived anywhere except Bundaberg. That's why I come down to Brisbane all the time for the conferences, Pete.
that's helpful.
Yeah, so my majority of my family are still in Bundaberg. My youngest brother, who's actually online today, is in Bundaberg. He works in council as well. Him and his young family. So I'm bringing up a young family in Bundaberg. Some of the good things about Bundaberg is, where I live in Bundaberg, I'm 7 minutes away from the beach. It takes me less than 7 minutes to get to work each day. So the lifestyle is quite easy around here, but and then I guess working for the region through the local government as well. As I say, I'm bringing up my kids here, so it is good to work towards helping make a difference and make the place better. They're just some of the things that are good about being in Bundaberg, that's for sure.
No, and like you say, at a professional level, the fact that you can connect outwards, we can do things like this. But then, like recently, you actually had people with the AWA. You had a regional meeting there, so people were actually coming to Bundaberg to see how you were doing things. So
yeah, that's right, exactly.
You become a showcase in your own right. So
Dwayne's probably got a bit to thank for that.
No, look, it's interesting, isn't it? When you have when you have a leader or someone who invests in the culture and the people, then that certainly helps a lot to make you feel valued. And you know, I know when I worked in local government, yeah, my kids were busy growing up. They used to help on quite a few of the tree planting projects, and years later you couldn't help but go, oh, hang on, let's go back and look at that project, what it's done. So it's something very grounding, I think, when, you know, I appreciate that with a young family, like this is their backyard that you're influencing.
Exactly right. Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And yeah, that's what I think, that's even local government or just engineering in general. That's why I like doing what I'm doing, because I'm invested in the future. Like, you know, hopefully my kids are going to be living in this world for another 80 or 100 years, and then their kids after that. You know, I'd hate to think that we leave it in a worse spot than what it is that we had. I think we've been pretty lucky in our lifetimes. I'd hate to think that we leave this place in a worse space and that they're worse off in the future because of decisions that we make, or, you know, how we're going about things, not working with the environment. That's something that, you know, drives me to come to work, and why I like this nature-based solutions in stormwater management. We want to make the world a better place at the end of the day.
Admire your passion there, Tim. Hey, look,
Thanks.
folks, any other questions from the floor there that people might like to
There's one here from Cherie in the chat.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Cherie, do you want to speak?
Yeah, please.
Hi, everyone. We're in the planning design, like conceptual design phase for a channel naturalization project. And my question is, we're thinking about post-evaluation. So what aspects, Tim, do you think would be crucial that we start monitoring or assessing at this stage so that we can measure or report on project success later down the track?
Yeah, I think one of the learnings for us on Bell Eden was, I wish that we'd have done some more water quality testing, some baseline water quality testing up front. The only thing is funding for it, and it is hard, I find, in local government to get funding for water quality testing when budgets are tight. But we have been lucky with Bell Eden that we have a committed 5-year program for water quality testing on it, and we have been doing that. And we've been doing it in a very simplistic way, in that we're measuring the water coming into the naturalization and measuring it out. We're lucky with the catchment that it's in. It's a pretty uniform catchment, that all the water enters one spot and it leaves at the next spot. So definitely the water quality monitoring would be something, if you could get in there and get some baseline data, I would suggest that. And then for us, what we've been doing, particularly post-construction, is and during construction really, but post-construction surveys of the community to understand how it's working for them over time. Because what we're seeing with the naturalization is that it is changing. It's changed from what it was when it was first put on the ground to what it is in the first year to the second year, and we expect in 10 years' time it's going to be different again. So understanding how the community values that space and what they think about it as it's changing is definitely something that we have picked up on. Potentially the other thing too is some baseline property valuations, and getting an understanding of what the actual property valuation changes are likely to be. We didn't really get any baseline information, but we've had some advice from local real estate agents that in the Bell Eden area, people directly adjacent to the naturalization could expect to see increases in valuation of up to $25,000.
Yeah, no, look, I think, well, you can actually nearly look at that retrospectively. You'll be able to look at some prices, but yeah, no, look, I think that's popped up in quite a few studies that or projects I've been involved with, and it's a bonus. Well, it's not a direct bonus to council, but it's a value to the community in one way or another, and part of that reason comes out, by significant changes in amenity and accessibility. So
potentially even like some baseline ecological surveys as well. That's probably something that we missed. I mean, we know through experience that at Bell Eden, what it was before, we literally had no biodiversity in the area that, you know, could be seen anyway. But yeah, to get that baseline information, yeah, they're definitely some of the learnings that, yeah, we wish we'd have got a bit more at the start, but.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thanks for that. I imagine one of our sites that we're thinking of is going to be biodiversity is close to zero as well. So
yeah, right.
I might just take some good photos and record that, and come back, and hopefully when the project's underway.
Yep.
And yeah, that's an easy one, but it's definitely good to capture right now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yep.
Seems so
Thank you.
important, doesn't it, to be able to capture all that baseline information so that not only can you assess the outcomes of your own project, but support the strategic development of the next and each other's. Because Tim Davies obviously has had plenty of experience with this here in Southeast Queensland, and vegetation monitoring and that side of things is going to be only going to help plan the next budget and so forth. So yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for that, Cherie. Much appreciated. Look, any other questions? Andrew Fichera, do you want to make any comments? You know, you got to. What's it like working with a brother on staff? Like, you know, any insights there? Like, you don't have to take too many things out of school, but I reckon that must be interesting having family working in the same workplace. He's been purposely quiet, putting you on the spot, Andrew.
Put him on the spot.
That's all right.
He's popped into the chat.
Yeah, there you go. Look, he's all right. Thanks. That's good.
I'll take that.
Okay. And thanks, Jamie. Like, you've got lots of stuff happening there. Yeah, all the different metrics. You know, there's plenty there for you, Cherie, from Jamie that's shared there as well in terms of evaluation process. But look, we're sort of starting. We've had a good full conversation. Anything else? That's a good one, Andrew. The old microphone problem. I like that one. But any other questions or that people have? Anything a little bit different? People want to raise, like.
Yeah, Peter. Video's off. Sorry, I'll pick up on something. This is Megan again from Logan. I was curious, as going back to the start, but curious about Tim was talking about the move from reactive stormwater asset maintenance to sort of looking at it from more of a flood risk perspective. Does that mean, Tim, that you sort of switched and did some modelling or some other way to understand where those high risk areas were?
Yeah. We were lucky in that we had already built an overland flood model for the entire LGA. So what we did was we took the outputs of that model and used that to identify what our highest risk spots were, and then from that, that was a relatively coarse model where we used that then to identify, right, where should we invest our time into doing a more detailed study, and out of that quantify what benefits we can get by putting in mitigation measures, be that structural or non-structural measures. But at least at a network level, then everything's being sort of assessed against the same thing. So when Johnny comes in and says, I've got flooding in my backyard, we've already quantified at a network level that we have all these other spaces that we're investing in where people might be getting above floor flooding, for example. So it's actually quite an easy conversation to have back to someone who's complaining, because when they get a no, there's always going to want to be the question, well, why? So yeah, we've tried to align ourselves so that it's the data that's driving what we're doing at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay. Because we have citywide overland flow models, and we've sort of talked as a team about starting to use that as a basis for our master drainage program. But there was always just a little bit of hesitation about how to validate it, and do we go back to the customer complaints as a form of validation? Are we actually getting those customer complaints, or are people just putting up with stuff? And so just curious about how much faith you can put in the modelling. It's a model. It doesn't, particularly overland flow, doesn't always get it right, but obviously good enough to be able to direct your efforts, as you say.
Yeah, so we built two more. So from that regional one, we built two very detailed overland models in the Bundaberg city and our coastal urban areas, which covers a high majority of our population. And we had a lot of really good information on peak flood levels from the October 2017 overland flood event we had. We also had a couple of gauges in the creek, so we were able to calibrate and validate it against an actual event, and utilize those models in particular for identifying our highest risk areas in those populated areas. So we were lucky in that respect. We did also we went through our customer complaints at that point in time for October 17 as well, and validated what the model was saying against those customer complaints. But yeah, one of the learnings, and you're probably well aware yourself, and I think you touched on it, that what we were finding was the people who were complaining generally are the ones who aren't at the highest risk. The people who are at the highest risk, they're resilient to it and they deal with it.
Yep.
And that's why it was really bad that we were basing our capital works program on complaints, because it's not your highest risk stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No
that's an interesting insight, Tim, isn't it? Like that's that balancing act. So
it is.
Yeah, like it's no.
And it's 80-20 rule too. As Megan touched on, you're not going to get everything perfect with a model. It's not going to pick up everything. There's always going to be stuff that come in that, yeah, you're going to have to deal with it. There's always there's a political nature to being in local government as well. But 80% of our projects now are not based on a complaint or, political influence. It's the other way around now. It's 80% is based on what we understand, where we should be and where we should be investing. To council's credit as well, previously we could never even give council this information to say, if there was a political decision being, well, I want this project done, we could never say to council, well, actually you shouldn't do that because we've got all these other problems in the local government area, because we had never quantified it either. So it's very hard for council to make a decision if they don't have the right information as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's some wise sites there. Like it is, that knowledge, information, just that data. It's part of the arsenal of what you need and part of your role.
Yeah.
I'm just conscious of time. Like we informally can stay on if people want to, but I think at this point in time, I think we've had a very rounded conversation here with Tim, finding out a little bit more about what's happening in Bundaberg, what he does in his sort of role and some of his own passions. And look, I know I'm very much the Richard, just appreciating what's happening. And Tim, thanks very much for being willing to sort of open up and share what sort of motivates you and how you go about it. Because I think it's a great story what you're sharing. Like it's not easy. You've been there at council for 11 years. So some of this confidence and abilities that, it takes that investment of time to be at this spot. So well done. And thanks to everyone who came online. We're up to 23, 24 people there at one stage. So a nice lunchtime quorum. Appreciate you've shared some of your time. Thanks to those, Tim and Jamie and Trevor who've shared some comments there in the chat. That's much appreciated. Hopefully Cherie and Megan, thanks for your comments, and to Bronwyn up there in Cairns. So folks, at this point in time, thank you very much for joining us. We've got another series starting this Thursday, also around some of what we call the research development from the RDI projects, research development innovation projects. And so if you see any of those that you'd like to join, we've got Tony Webber coming on this Thursday, and a couple other ladies, Cherie O'Sullivan the week after, talking about some work in the Mary Burnett, and then Hanshi Lee talking about some work up in Tully around paleo channels. So we've got a nice mix of things over the next few weeks. So at that point in time, from Sarah and I, thank you very much for joining us all. Really appreciate you being available. And I'm going to stay online for a little bit longer, but for anyone else who wants to have a chat, feel free to join us. Otherwise, thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Pete.
the
Thanks,
week.
Sarah.
Thank
And
you.
thanks, Tim.
Thanks all. Cheers.
Thank you
That's
all.
a shame, Andrew, that your microphone didn't work. I should have lined him up beforehand.
I should have lined him up beforehand too. I saw the list going, oh, he's going to be online.